Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Neisser.
If you're at all active in social media, chances are you've heard of, if not had personal experience with Hootsuite. In fact, you can count me among the 15 million or so customers that use their social media marketing platform. I've been using it, frankly, for years, and part of their success has been the long-time availability of a free entry-level product, making it easy for anyone to try it out and get familiar with managing multiple social streams at the same time. And though most of us in the business know the product, we know remarkably little about the company and how it got where it is today. To answer that riddle and to get at what state of the art in social media is today, I'm really delighted to introduce you to my guest, Penny Wilson, the Chief Marketing Officer of Hootsuite. So, Penny, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Drew. Happy to be here.
I suspect a lot of my listeners didn't know that Hootsuite is a Canadian company with headquarters in Vancouver. And I noticed in one of your tweets that Justin Trudeau gave you a shout out as a success story. You guys must be rock stars up there.
Yeah, I think that, the company started about a little over 8 years ago here in Vancouver, and it's been definitely one of the success stories for the Canadian market. I think Justin gave us a shout out along with Shopify and a few others. So it's nice to be included.
So I'm curious, because I know that you worked at Macromedia and Juniper Networks, which are Silicon Valley-based companies. Is there a cultural difference working for a Canadian company that you noticed?
Well, we had a lot of beards and plaid shirts, maybe, but
and you're out and about,
and we're out and about,
right?
But no, I don't think so. I mean, I worked at Alias Research, was a 3D computer graphics company in Toronto, which was bought by Silicon Graphics a number of years ago. Culture there is very similar to here, and I think the culture at Macromedia was very similar too. I love to tell the story about how the culture of the company and the culture of our customers are quite intertwined. So, we call ourselves owls, and I think our customers are very connected with the people within the company itself, and the tools that we provide are really important to their professional success, and so it makes for a really nice marriage. And I feel that was the same way with at Macromedia, people called themselves flashers, or depending on what technology they used, because it was very defining as far as their role and the job that they did.
So I wanted to ask you about, you just joined Hootsuite a couple of years ago, and I noticed that you were founder and president of Noggins, a brain fitness company. Was it hard to go, and I know this is a weird question, but you ran your own thing, and was it hard to sort of go back and be on the line after running the whole shebang?
No, not at all. So I actually retired. So I commuted from Vancouver to Silicon Valley for almost 10 years. And then I decided to retire, and the brain fitness happens to be my personal passion. I had a partner who was a PhD in neuroscience, and but when I met Ryan for coffee one day, I think that the marketer's dream has always been that one-to-one human connection between the customer and the company. And when I see the opportunity in social to move beyond marketing, it was a really good opportunity for me to come in and help a young company take it to this level of scale.
So I think it's interesting. I mean, you use the term beyond marketing. What do you mean there, and what does that mean in the context of social?
Well, I think people who consider social at a very strategic level look at social across the whole organization. So whether it's their marketers marketing, or it's their customer service people providing service, or it's their sellers selling, or it's their recruiters recruiting. They use social across the whole organization, and they empower their employees to communicate with their customers in a one-on-one way. Not everybody is at that level of sophistication, but that opportunity exists. If you look at 10 years ago, we were still in a mode where we'd do a whole bunch of development around a campaign and we'd put it out there and we'd see if it works. And really, we live in a very different world. We have an opportunity to test and learn on an almost immediate basis.
Yeah, that's certainly one of my favorite parts about social. And we're going to dive in to social media pretty deeply in later part of this show. I wanted to sort of get back to, so you arrived at Hootsuite at a really interesting time because it had explosive growth. But a couple of years ago, it started the market was maturing. And as at least from my research, it said sales had sort of stalled. And you were part of this new leadership team to sort of reinvigorate things. First of all, is that a fair assessment? And if so, what were your top priorities as CMO coming into this organization?
I think there was, in every entrepreneur's life, there's a desire to bring in some people who have been there and done it before. And so I think I was brought in here to help the company scale, and lay some of those more foundational pieces. So one of my priorities was really ensuring that we brought the voice of the customer into the organization in a fairly consistently well-heard manner. So that was one of the priorities. The other priority was really to demonstrate to the world that we, as you said earlier, we have an adoption of 16 million customers because you could start at the free level and scale all the way up to a large enterprise, and really being able to demonstrate that to our customers, that we could scale all the way up to the largest enterprise. So that would have been another initiative, because I think we had a brand misperception, which was that we were just an SMB player.
And so you said a couple of things, and I want to sort of break them down, or as people say these days, unpack them. By the way, that'll be the last time you'll ever hear me say that term on Renegade Thinkers Unite. But, so we're going to unpack voice of the customer, because I think that's such an interesting area for social. And if we focus on Hootsuite as a social listening tool, it's like you're using your world to help yourself be a better marketer and product developer. Is that a fair? You're sort of drinking your own champagne, so to speak.
Absolutely. 100%.
And so and voice of the customer is really, is one of these terms that has been around a while. What does it mean in the context of exactly what were you listening for, and how did that impact, whether it was product development or marketing activities?
So we're listening sort of at every stage in the customer journey. So making sure we're listening to both customers that are aware of us and those who are not, or that are evaluating us and those who don't. In the selling motion itself, right the way through customer support and customer success and customer loyalty, and really looking at the overall journey that a customer has with Hootsuite, and making sure that at every step of the way that we have clear understanding, clear metrics, and a way to give that input to the whole organization, from the executive team to the people on the support desk.
And so in this scenario, voice of the customer is as much just sort of making sure that you understand that if someone is using you on an individual level, but you're not getting enterprise adoption, for example, that would allow you to change what you say and what you write about in order to sort of get sort of more consideration. Is that what we're sort of essentially talking about? Is improving consideration for Hootsuite as a tool that you could use for things that you didn't know you could use it for?
Well, I think that's one of the outcomes. That's one of the initiatives. I wouldn't say that's necessarily what I mean by voice of the customer.
Okay, good.
What I'm trying to do is build a culture that allows the customer to direct us versus us trying to direct the customer. I've always been a proponent of letting the customer lead. Marketing's no longer on send. Like, we need to be on receive mode. And so the more that we can listen and learn about our customers, and frankly our competition as well, it will uncover those really truly valuable insights that help you leapfrog to the next stage. And I often use not a Hootsuite analogy, but I often use an analogy from a previous portion of my career in 3D computer graphics, which was in the 90s. And we were in the gaming industry and, listening to the challenges that our customers have. And if you were a gamer back then, you might remember that none of the people, they had muscles, they had skin, but they didn't have real hair. So their hair just kind of sat still on the top of their head. But, listening to our customers, our engineers created digital hair. And it really leapfrogged us above any of the other competitions. So it's those kinds of nuggets that if you can pull them out of your customers directly, that will really help your company get a competitive advantage.
And if you don't, you'll be pulling your hair out, I suspect.
Yeah. There you go. You will be here.
So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to explore a little bit more on voice of the customer, because I think that's really interesting, and some of the other things that Penny has brought up. So stay with us. Hey, it's Drew. I wanted to use this break to ask you a single question. Are you a courageous marketer? Do you have the courage to go to your board of directors and say, marketing could drive the growth of this company? We just need 3 times the budget. Do you have the courage to take the big idea that you already have and extend it internally and externally through influencers, through the media, through all of your content? If you're a courageous marketer but aren't sure how to roadmap all of this, I have a big idea for you. It's called Renegade Thinking. It's a program that we've developed and work with exclusively for B2B marketers, generally at large companies. And I want to give you my cell phone, 917-679-8852. Just text Renegade Thinking to 917-679-8852, and we can talk about how you can cut through. Okay, we're back, and my guest is Penny Wilson, who is the CMO of Hootsuite. And we were talking about voice of the customer and finding insights. And I'm particularly interested in insights because, over the years, there have been little tiny things that have triggered some of the most exciting, effective programs that we've ever developed on this end. But it takes experience, in my opinion, to sort of listen and figure out that right thing. How do you approach listening as the CMO? I mean, are you doing it on your own, or is it filtered for you? And so I'm curious, how are we going to find the no real hair message? How's that going to bubble up to you to take action?
So I guess it's multiple ways. Yes, I listen on my own, but I do have a team that puts my customer insights together on a regular basis to bring visibility to the executive team as well as the product team and the rest of the organization. We look at, key metrics on our customers. We look at, all of the input from our customers, look for trends in that customer information. We have somebody looking at our whole customer journey and how we can improve that. Maybe a good example of it would be to give you a customer example of somebody who's really done a great job in converting their company and their strategy and their organization based on customer insights. It's one of our customers, called Accor Hotels. They have about 4,000 hotels in 95 different countries. And they realized that they needed to build a competitive advantage. They had to have a relationship with the customers sort of before they came to the hotel, during their stay at the hotel, and after they left the hotel. And obviously that social was a place where there was a lot of conversation about travel, where people were going or where they wanted to go or what they felt about where they went. And so they created the Accor social desk. They also knew that they couldn't just empower a single social media management team in headquarters to manage 4,000 countries or 4,000 hotels. So that and it needed to be an authentic voice. So they empowered everyone in their hotels with an Accor social desk so they could talk directly to their customers, and they could learn about where their customers were interested in going, and they could address their needs, or they could learn about what they didn't like, and they could fix things within their own community. But they could be very local and authentic with their customers. And, I think that it's not just a marketing tactic anymore. It's really, that's a good example of how social is really everyone's job, and listening to the customer and responding to the customer, because we live in this real-time world and customers expect an immediate response, is so important to any business.
It's interesting. It reminds me of some noise that Best Buy made years ago when they sort of set up a program to allow all of their sort of specialists to go and answer questions all the time from anywhere. And that program got them a lot of publicity. I haven't heard about it lately, but it sounds like what you're saying is basically as many possible employees at the hotel chain are suddenly empowered to be representatives of the company, and that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that you are, because I had a conversation with the folks at Microsoft on Windows 10, and they talked about how the social listening team brought back feedback on the last iteration of Windows and said, here are the 10 things that you need to fix to reduce our complaint level by 60%. So they did all those things, and then they went into beta, and then they listened some more and found out that, well, if you fix these 10 things, then we'd really get issues down to a very minimal level. Is that part of your world in terms of listening to these comments and getting sort of feedback that can make the product better?
Absolutely. We have sort of a model we call RUF. So we categorize all the feedback for the product team into, reliability, usability, and functionality. That spells rough. And so on a regular basis, we report in those three categories what the top issues are. We can see it around the globe. I mean, it's also accessible, worldwide.
And it's sort of funny. The acronym also has a little bit of an edge to it. It says, well, some of these comments could be rough, folks. So I think we'll take a quick break here, and I want to come back and talk about a little bit about Hootsuite's one of the challenges that you mentioned early on. So we'll be right back.
Hey, it's Drew. I was at a conference the other day and somebody looked at my saw lapel pen and said, what's up with that? And I said, well, what's the one thing that marketing has always had to do? Forget digital, forget all this stuff. What is the one marketing imperative? And he looked at me and went, cut through. And I went, yes, ding, 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 ding. That's right. Cut through. That is what marketing must do. And it's not just cutting through the clutter, although that's really important, because if your marketing doesn't cut through the clutter, it's like the proverbial tree in the forest that falls and nobody hears it. But it's also cutting through the crap and the processes that inhibit innovation. We've been working a lot lately with some CMOs to help them cut through the crap and get at the essence of what is their big idea. And how can they make a case to expand that idea across their business? That, to me, is cutting through.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Penny Wilson, the CMO of Hootsuite. And you mentioned something interesting, because again, I'm so aware of Hootsuite and have been, gosh, I feel like since social media started, or we started getting into it, and certainly have been a long time user. But you mentioned that a lot of folks don't necessarily see you as an enterprise provider. And I think a lot of brands and marketers have a challenge in that they start out being one thing for a group of people, and people think of them as that. And so it becomes very difficult to sort of break out of the box and say, no, we're not just for small business or solopreneurs. We're for enterprise, or we're for this other target. How did you guys go about getting that sort of not just awareness in the enterprise level, but also sort of getting them to say, "Whoa, they're really competitive there"?
Yeah, I think that one way for us was that we worked really closely with the analyst community, so Gartner and Forrester and their key analysts, to demonstrate the functionality of Hootsuite and show the power of Hootsuite. So I've given example before of a company like Siemens, where Hootsuite would have come on as a free tool in their corporate communications team, and then all of a sudden they bought a professional seat, and then they brought 10 people on, and they bought a team seat, and then they bought an enterprise license, and then they bought the analytics tools. And so you can watch the evolution of a customer and their maturity level going from low to high as they build on this toolkit in social media. So as far as us being able to prove it, we got a leadership position on the Forrester Wave this year in social media management. I think that was a good demonstration of our ability to show that we've got the muscle at the, from the bottom all the way to the very high end.
And I think that was a really critical point. I mean, for B2B marketers in particular, having a third party that is credible and often gone to and looked to by the C-suite for advice when you're making sort of an IT investment, which is what an enterprise decision becomes, right? And so suddenly, and so you need the validity that is, or the assurance that Forrester or Gartner or whatever it is in your category can provide. So I think that's really smart. And in the playbook, it's funny, it occurred to me how important that is for almost any software company that is trying to get the enterprise sale. I also thought it was interesting that while that was happening and providing sort of permission for C-suite and IT professionals to approve you were able to get the end user sort of to push it up the line. And I think that's where your free and freemium product helped you so much, is that you got this widespread distribution. So then it becomes a question of sort of finding all of those individuals who are using it in large companies and then trying to get them to sort of say, hey, there's an enterprise solution there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, like yourself, as a champion of Hootsuite and a user of Hootsuite, it's really making sure that you have the tools to sell the social strategy up into the organization.
So it sounds like everything's going pretty well, but what's the toughest challenge that you've had, either it's Hootsuite and a lesson that you've learned of late that you could share with the audience?
I guess one of the biggest challenges I find, meeting with a number of CMOs, is the constant need to get approval and tie the marketing work to the return that you're getting from that investment. So the sort of CMO, CFO challenge, if you will. And so as social starts to mature into that key customer engagement channel, I think marketers are challenged more and more to make sure that they can demonstrate the return on their investment. So, it's really to equip the organization and the CFO in particular with education and tools to how to understand how to connect social to an outcome, and making sure that you recognize the outcomes that you're trying to drive. So some of them could be revenue, some of them could be customer service, some of them could be brand perception, some of them could be, crisis communications or recruiting, but making sure that you tie it back to what the key business goals are, and that then you have an ability to measure it.
So I love the conversation of ROI, because I know that every CMO wants to walk into the C-suite and say, hey, we're spending this amount of money and we're getting this kind of increase in revenue. Yet, we know when it comes to social media that if we didn't do social customer service well, we'll lose customers, right? So there's no return on ignoring. So we have to weight that in there. We also know that if you as a company today wanting to recruit millennials, if you don't have a social media presence, you won't be able to have as effective recruiting. So it'll cost you more to recruit. It'll be harder to retain. How do you put and you mentioned all of those factors that social can play. How do you then say, well, this part of the human resource value is worth X, and the customer retention value is worth Y, and then the customer acquisition is worth Z. So when you add all that up, we spent $1 million and it's $5 million in return. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I think that we recently acquired a company called Lift Metrics, but it's the Hootsuite Impact product. And it allows you to set up a strategy, sort of your hypothesis-driven strategy that you believe social is driving this. And then you can tool the application so that you can track the social interactions directly to, as I said, if it's your recruiting process and then the outcome of your recruiting, or if it's some lead that you're trying to measure, or it's directly to your e-commerce, that you can tie those metrics. I mean, the digital world we live in allows us to tie and measure in a much more effective way. And I think we feel we've got an application that is that's really empowers people to do that.
All right. Well, I'll have to check that out. But in the meantime, are there any opportunities in social today that you think are overlooked versus sort of what we all sort of now? Well, we got to have customer service. We got to be sharing content. Is there something out there that you're seeing that savvy marketers should really be paying attention to in terms of trends in social media today?
Well, I think outside of the trends itself, I think one of the things that marketers need to understand is that not everyone is comfortable in social yet. And in order for them to use the tools effectively and efficiently to get their job done, there needs to be some level of education built into, whether it is your customer service or all the way up to your CEO, to make sure that you can use the human capital that you have access to in the most effective way.
And is that why we have Hootsuite University? I'm setting you up here.
Yes, we have Hootsuite Academy.
Okay.
Yes, that's why we have Hootsuite Academy.
Okay.
But I also think from a trend perspective, what we'll see a lot more in social is the introduction of the opportunity that artificial intelligence provides. So really making it easier for a company to use social media to scale in a way, not that, we're going to replace people with chatbots, but in a way where we can understand what a customer is looking for and get them to that final destination faster.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I've talked to Dan Gingas, who does, social customer care at McDonald's, and also, CEO of Pega. And we had a lot of conversations about AI and what it can and can't do and should do. And, I think your point about, I think there are things that bots can probably do very well on social, like, example being, how many calories are there in a Big Mac, right? That's a easy question that you don't need to necessarily waste human capital on. But if they're having an issue about why wasn't my burger warm, then you obviously want a person to say, gee, I'm sorry your burger wasn't warm. Where'd you get it? Let's figure out how we can fix this. But I'm curious in your mind as we sort of look at AI, because there's so many different things that it could do. If there's a specific example in your mind as you look at AI and you go, oh my God, this will be amazing for people to implement.
Well, as I said, I do think it will help you get people to real life people faster and the more qualified person in order to answer a customer's question faster. So I think it accelerates the human element, doesn't take away from it or weaken it in any way. And then I also think it will offer us an opportunity to make that listening easier. The beauty of social is the fact that you have access to all of this information, but sometimes it's really, difficult to get true insights out of that information. And I think AI will bring us a long way in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. So I have this vision of I'm a tech company. I've got actually hundreds and hundreds of comments coming in. Someone asks about a very specific tech coding issue that the AI recognizes those words that say, "Oh, tech coding issue," pushes it off to a tech coding expert. That person also has served up to them an answer that might suit that thing, and then they have the choice of pushing that answer right back to the individual. Is that a approximation?
Yeah, I have a dream that as a CMO, I can just wake up in the morning and I can ask Siri what my customers are thinking today and what I could address and how I could prioritize and. So that's my dream.
Okay. All right. Well, we all have our dreams. My dream is that just Alexa will just start to be able to infer a little bit better. It's just so, it's so funny because it's great and an amazing tool. But if you say, "Hey, I want to hear Evan Hansen," she won't be able to figure it out. But if you say, "Dear Evan Hansen, the Broadway musical cast album," she'll get it. And you go, wait a second. A human would have gotten that in a second. So, don't worry, folks. The bots are not going to replace us just yet. So, anyway, I want to, Penny, thank you so much for being on Renegade Thinkers Unite. I'm going to take a quick second to try to summarize some of the things that I think are really important here. We spent a lot of time talking about social media, but what was interesting is almost all of the conversation had to do with listening and responding. We spent very little time on content creation. That doesn't mean that stuff isn't important, but part of it is we were talking about a platform that fundamentally is a social listening platform. So I know that's where Penny's coming from, but also it is such a big opportunity for brands to there's all this noise out there, to listen for what could be a nugget that could change the way you're marketing. It could change the way your product is being developed. It could change the way you're positioning your brand against your competition. And all that information is out there right now. You just have to put your ear up to the radio, if you will, of social media. So that's the big theme. I think that I took away from this. Is there anything I missed on that in that wrap up in terms of sort of things that you think, Penny, that people should be thinking about as a takeaway from this episode?
Well, just in response to your closing remarks there, Drew, I do think content is still king, and that the opportunity that social offers from a content perspective is to make it more personal and relevant to your customers. And so I've often used an acronym for things. I think this is based on my neuroscience passion, but I think that in order to scale a company, social really offers you the opportunity to align your whole business to those customers. It gives you the opportunity to be very customer centric, to be authentic and personalized and very relevant, to be able to listen and learn from them, and then to be able to engage with your customers. So those are my sort of 5 key points: social, customer-centered, authentic, listen and learn and engage. And that's my acronym of SCALE. I always like to leave a little memory enhancer.
I love it. I love it. So speaking of personal and authentic, I want to remind my listeners that I'm really interested in your feedback. And so I'm actually going to give you my cell phone number. It's 917-679-8852. And I'd love for you to text some questions or thoughts that you have on how you're using social media to make your business grow faster, or someone else that you might like to hear be interviewed on Renegade Thinkers Unite. So Penny, again, thanks for being on the show. And for the rest of you out there, don't forget to tell your friends about the show and keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.